Hey, fearless fungus festers. This is Nikki, at home on the sailing barge Swerver in Prince William Sound. Have you ever gotten back from a foray with a load of mushrooms and been completely overwhelmed about where to begin? I have. So I've developed sort of a routine for what to do when I get home, even if I'm soaking wet and late with dinner. The first thing I do when I bring my harvest on board is to spread it out on a towel. Depending on how many mushrooms I got, it could be a beach towel or a washcloth. Once the mushrooms are all spread out, they will dry off some. Much of the dirt, twigs, hemlock needles, and bugs will fall off. Most importantly, you can see what you have and plan what to do with them. If you leave them clumped together in a container, they're likely to get slimy. It's really discouraging to dump out a container of mushrooms that sat overnight and discover that the bugs and slime has multiplied. Spreading out on a towel also allows for a quick pass for quality control. Those ones that look to be just a little past their prime, but maybe okay when they were in the woods, may look way past their prime when sitting among other choice ones. Toss out the substandard ones, remove any buggy stems, and cut off the black or slimy parts. These Yellowfoot Chanterelles on the left have had their stems cut cleanly with scissors in the field. They don't need much attention. You can see my kitchen scale there. I often weigh my mushrooms, mostly for fun and bragging rights. Weight isn't a very accurate measurement because the amount of water in the mushrooms really affects how much they weigh. The hedgehogs on the right have had their stems cut off pretty cleanly, leaving most of the dirt and needles on the stems in the ground. One of the characteristics of hedgehogs is that they stain orange. When mycologists say stains about a mushroom, they don't mean the dyeing quality of the mushroom. Usually stain means that when a mushroom is bruised or cut, it will turn a color. You can see the hedgehogs here, which were brilliant cream or white in the forest, are now orangish from trimming or handling. Doesn't mean they're bad, it's just what hedgehogs do. If you handle lots of hedgehogs, you'll get orange fingers. Some folks say never put mushrooms in plastic. I don't adhere to that. I often use plastic bags or buckets. I usually carry plastic grocery bags or recycled Ziplocs in my pockets, just in case I come across some choice edibles or berries. It's okay to collect in plastic bags or buckets if you spread them out to dry immediately when you get home. If enough dirt doesn't fall off on the towel to please you, washing is fine. Mushrooms grow in a rainforest. If you forage on a rainy day, they will be full of water anyway. If they're holding a lot of moisture, it will just take longer cooking to evaporate the water away. I usually leave the mushrooms on the towel for several hours or overnight until I'm ready to deal with them. Once the mushrooms are clean and dry to touch, they can be stored in a paper bag in the refrigerator. They'll keep longest in the refrigerator if they are cooked first. The mushrooms in this photo were gathered near Girdwood. I was attending the Fungus Fair in my camper van, Louise. I spread out my harvest on a towel on the floor to dry, sort, and see what I had. I was hoping for enough mushrooms to marinate for their recipe swap. It looks like I got enough. As you can see, they have a bit of grass, leaves, and needles on them, but I cleaned them pretty well in the forest. The stems are trimmed neatly. It looks like I got some Yellowfoot chants up there. I probably dried those. These guys are Liophyllum, sometimes called fried chicken mushrooms. They really don't taste like fried chicken, but they cook up nice and firm and meaty. They make nice marinated mushrooms too. I slice the big ones thickly and leave the little ones whole. I think I made about a half-pint jelly jar out of this bunch. All of these are Cortinarius caparatus, gypsy mushrooms. When marinated, they fit into a pretty big jar. As I recall, I used a 25-ounce Costco artichoke hearts jar. And it looks like I got one hedgehog that day. Now let's see what you can do with all those mushrooms. Yellowfoot chanterelles dry really well. I spread them out on racks, baskets, or mesh, where the air can circulate freely around them. Then I put them in a warm, dry place to dry. If I get any mushrooms that are good for dyeing fabrics and yarns, I dry them as well to give to my friends who are dyers. It makes me very popular. On Swerver, the warmest place to dry mushrooms is in my engine room. Oh, and I don't leave them on the engine when it's running, or they'd all shake off into the bilge. But any warm, airy place is fine. One friend of mine dries all her mushrooms on those net sweater drying frames in her hot water heater room. Another friend has racks over her wood stove for drying mushrooms, hats, and gloves. Serious folks who dehydrate lots of fruits and vegetables use electric models for their mushrooms. I just don't have room for one of those on my boat. They're great. Wow, look at these little guys. You can see they really shrunk. I pop them in airtight jars or bags and they keep for years. And chanterelles dry quickly and rehydrate in a heartbeat to almost their original size and shape. The dried ones taste a little different than the fresh ones, but they cook up just as well. I saute them in a little butter or oil to crisp the edges, brown them, and brighten the flavor. Then I put them into pilafs, stir fries, dips, or whatever. Sliced hedgehogs dry nicely too, but they don't reconstitute well at all. They end up chewy like leather. I grind them up into powder in my spice grinder. I have a couple of these coffee grinders from the secondhand store for grinding stuff other than coffee. I use lots of hog powder in dishes to add umami and brighten the taste. It definitely enhances the mushroomy flavor of other mushrooms in a soup, stir fry, or stew. Parboiling just means pre-boiling to me. All mushrooms need to be cooked well. Mushrooms are made mostly of chitin, which humans can barely digest. Although full of nutrients, most of the good stuff isn't available unless the mushrooms are cooked. Mushrooms that are safe to eat raw, like store-bought cultivated ones, make good roughage for the bowel, but they don't really impart any of their nutrients to the eater unless cooked. Some edible wild mushrooms will make some people really sick unless cooked well. So it's wise to cook all mushrooms, especially the wild ones. Parboiling makes mushrooms more compact for freezing, and being frozen in their liquid helps prevent freezer burn. I often parboil the mushrooms and put them in the fridge for several days, using them in different dishes each day. This sulfur shelf on the left was given to me, a prime young specimen. I boiled it, stored the chunks in the fridge. I got 3 dishes out of that one mushroom. Remember, I'm only cooking for one. I minced the chunks finely for country mushroom soup for a lunch. Then I added some of those minced pieces to cream cheese, chives, and seasonings for a mushroom dip the next day. The rest of the parboiled chunks I sauteed with onions to top a steak on the 3rd day. They were great. I wish I could get more sulfur shelves. But sulfur shelves are only good very young, right after they spring forth from a stump or tree. I've tried cutting the edges off big shelves growing on a tree. Theoretically, the edges are new growth, but they cook up and taste like cardboard. The one in the previous slide came from the Cordova area. This one I found in Jack Bay. They are the only 2 I've ever had young enough to eat. They were wonderful. When I find older sulfur shelves on trees, I take pictures and don't bother trying to eat them anymore. On how rainy it's been and whether or not you wash the mushrooms, they will have lots of water in them. Pile them in a dry or lightly oiled pan and start cooking on low heat. As they begin to give up their moisture, increase the heat and boil them till all the liquid evaporates. By that time, they should be thoroughly cooked. Add oil or butter to crispen and salt and pepper if you like. These are admirable boletes. They're tasty but can cook up a little slimy. Sautéing is a good way to crisp them. Those are my favorite way freeze mushrooms. It's a French cooking technique, named for the 17th century French Marquis Duxelles. You finely chop mushrooms, or just the stems if you've used the caps for something else. Then mix in onions, shallots, and herbs. Saute in butter until all the moisture is reduced. Duxelles go great as a spread on crackers or toast. Mix them with cream cheese or goat cheese as a dip. Ooh, you can fill ravioli with them, stuff them in omelets, add to soups, stews, and gravies. The uses are endless. Anytime you need chopped mushrooms, they're ready to go. The mix also freezes beautifully, so prepare lots of packages for the freezer in the fall and you'll be able to pop them into recipes all year. Speaking of all year, I enjoy marinated mushrooms all year. Jars live at the bottom of my fridge, just waiting for them to come out for any occasion. It's a top-loading fridge. They're good in salads. I like them on sandwiches and burgers. They're especially popular with crackers at book club meetings. A mushroom dip made of Duxelles and cream cheese is also a big hit at book club. There are lots of recipes for pickled and marinated mushrooms online and in cookbooks, but all are essentially 3 steps. 1. Remove the moisture. 2. Heat with acid and spices. 3. Seal in jars. It's fun to try combinations of spices and different wines and vinegars for the acid. Personally, I like the parboil and squeeze 'em method to get out the mushroom juice. I've tried salting the mushrooms. Lots of liquid comes out as a brine, but I never seem to be able to flush enough of the salt out. The finished product turns out way too salty for me. Then I use the quick refrigerated pickling procedure. It doesn't require a big kettle for a hot water bath, but the jars must be stored in the refrigerator after sealing. I add some oil to the pickling liquid, which makes them marinated in my book. They seem a little more elegant with a light coating of flavorful oil. Many folks are interested only in foraging for edible mushrooms. When they hear that something is out, they head for the woods, filling their buckets and baskets. That's fine, but I wander in the woods nearly every day all summer. The edible ones are way in the minority, and it's nice to know what some of those other mushrooms are, especially the really pretty ones. I've learned to limit what I pick of the non-edibles. I used to bring back home a whole basket of assorted mushrooms and try to figure out what they all were. Oh, it was very frustrating. Now I try to learn 1 or 2 mushrooms each season. After 14 years, I know about 20 mushrooms pretty well, and at least the genus of a few more. When I want to identify a mushroom, I start by taking a picture of the mushroom that shows its habitat and most of the key features, like color, texture, and how the gills, stem, and cap are shaped. The Forest Service pamphlet, Mushrooms of the National Forest of Alaska, is the best field guide for our area there is. It has many of the common mushrooms, especially the choice edibles that we have in Alaska. Most of them can be identified by the picture, and you can download this pamphlet to have with you on your smartphone. For years, I tried to look up mushrooms in field guides. None of the ones I had in my hand looked anything like the picture books. My world really changed when I started attending fungus festivals. Going around with a knowledgeable person is the best way to start. Even if you're only into edibles, find a local mushroomer and learn from them what is good in your area. Noah Siegel's and Christian Swartz's book, Mushrooms of the Redwood Coast, is a wonderful reference. Many of the California species in this book we have up here. Noah's photographs are magnificent. For each mushroom, he discusses what it's about, uses, what it's similar to, and most important, what you can mistake it for. I love his discussion sections. Then there are a couple of online resources I use a lot. iNaturalist is a worldwide app where you can post a picture of a mushroom or anything else in the natural world, and folks will help identify it. It's really fun, and I enjoy following other mushrooms mushroomers in my locality to see what they're finding. Matchmaker is a computer program where you put in all the information about a mushroom you know, stuff like habitat, size, color, gill type, cap type, smell, taste, da 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 da. The program will give you a list of matches. You then go through the pictures and the detailed descriptions of the matches to see if you got what you have resembles any of them. By using Matchmaker, I've gotten much better at noting features of the mushrooms in the field. The more detail, the better my match will be. Unlike most keys, Matchmaker uses what information you have. You don't get stopped dead because you don't know a particular feature. There's a new Matchmaker app for iPhones and Androids, but I haven't used it yet. Hopefully it won't require internet all the time, which is I don't have very much of the time. Welcome to my world. Here's a picture of Zwerver and my contact info. If you're in Valdez in the winter, look me up. I'm not hard to find. In the summer, keep an eye out for a Dutch sailing barge on Prince William Sound. I could be anywhere. In the fall, I'm usually in the north part of the Sound, wandering the woods, picking berries, and looking at mushrooms.